the online, the app, and the online. Next year we'll be seeing a new face for Samba soon, inshallah. Thank you.
Congratulations. Please.
Hello, this is Abdullah Atabi from Digital Banking. I came from art and design background. I worked in oil and gas, telecommunication, and currently banking. What I do is help organizations, especially right now is Riyadh Bank, design and develop digital products that are built around the customer need and expectation and hopefully desires.
So my name is Ali Lashad. I head the Strategy and Innovation Management Office for Gulf International Bank. We were the bank to launch the first Sharia-compliant digital bank in the world, and the first digital bank, in the region. Basically, what we're working on is business model innovations and basically reinventing customer journeys, where we think that it'll have the biggest impact on the customer's life. So that's where we're working.
This is Abdulaziz Al-Dahmash. I'm head of digital banking and payments at Saudi British Bank. My role is with the team to transform the whole bank in terms to be more digital, providing customer experience through digital channels, and be the leading bank in digital in KSA.
Assalamu alaikum jami'an. My name is Abdullah Mubarak. I'm the head of digital ventures at NCB. So what I look into specifically is the fintech opportunities within NCB. But at a larger scale, what we do generally as Digital and Technology Group, we focus on really pushing forward with our digital agenda and continuing our lead in the digital journey.
Thank you. Well, for those of you in the audience, this is a unique opportunity to hear directly from the innovators and the disruptors in the region. On my part, I work mainly in the Asia-Pacific region. And in the Asia-Pacific region, I do also quite a bit of work moderating panels and working with clients. And what we're facing are painful talent shortages. We do benefit from strong collaboration with our regulators, although we do have some healthy debates about that. We are facing issues, obviously, around cybersecurity, et cetera, in terms of our advancement. And I think the key thing that we really are facing is to ensure that we identify the right use cases and solve those. So we have a lot of issues and problems that we're solving. It's, as I was describing to you, we're at a full boil in Asia Pacific. Not always in a good way. Sometimes it feels a bit painful in terms of the journey. So yeah, when they say move fast and break things, we're definitely breaking some things in Asia Pacific. I'll be happy to share those experiences and compare and contrast. But from the part of the panel, my first question to pose to you is, according to the FinTech Insider in London, their main hypothesis they always state is that digital banking is 1% complete. Based on your current experience, do you agree with that? How complete do you think we are? And yeah.
1% is too little. I don't think, I tried to study yesterday about this question. I didn't see anything about it. Let me talk about my bank. I could say 80% of our customers now are on the online. 75% of them, they're using the apps. And it's increasing every year, increasing. So that's what I'm talking about the kingdom. But maybe if the question will take it on another side, are you talking about the investment in the blockchains or in this AI and robotic RPA? Maybe the banks, at the end, they're bankers. They want to invest in something that there's an ROI, there's a return on investment. So they're a bit cautious. So maybe my advice, maybe for the banks, it's to have the labs, invest, see this new establishment that making these blockchains or this, and invest in it. But there's a risk, so the investment should be maybe minimum. Yeah.
So you think less than 1% done?
In that stage, yes, but in usage, transactions, no, it's growing.
Okay.
Tremendously.
That's promising.
Yes.
How about you? What percent done?
Well, I'm sure Ali have a better answer here since they already have went through their digitization way ahead of almost the region at least. Looking at it from my own bank, I wouldn't say 1%, but maybe 50 to 60% perhaps. And so digitization of services and products is happening in the background at the moment. Most of our products are currently online, fully digitized, onboarding as well. And there is also transformation of infrastructure, which is happening as well in the background, and transformation of culture, which is continuous, ongoing improvement and transformation. I will leave it to Ali, and I'm sure he can.
No pressure.
Right, so what's the difference between digital banking and online banking is the question that I ask when somebody asks me that question.
Thank you.
If you're asking about online banking, I'd say about 80% of the population is on online banking. There's no doubt about that. But when you're talking about a digital bank being truly digital, we haven't even scratched the surface. We're very good at launching our products online. We're very good at onboarding our customers online. But in terms of creating a truly digital bank, in terms of the culture, the procedures, the infrastructure, we haven't even scratched the surface. The rest of the world, I would say, isn't far off. I mean, they're trying in some cases. You have a lot of digital banks that stepped up to the plate, and they've actually pushed the boundaries. But in terms of the old bricks and mortar banks, it's a struggle. It's not something easy, and that's why I'd say I'm definitely not agreeing to the 1%, but I definitely don't agree to obviously it being more than 10 to 15%. I mean, a great example is I'm aware of a local bank that has deployed robotics into their infrastructure to digitize the process and remove the human intervention throughout it. And it took a lot of time for them to do it, but finally they managed to succeed and launch it recently. So I'd say from a digitization perspective, I wouldn't say we're more than 10%. We haven't even begun to run the surface. GIB is in a unique position because we have no legacy. So we didn't carry most of the pain points that most of our colleagues have had. And so we were able to create it from scratch as a digital bank. The whole design started off with the DNA of a digital bank and not a bricks and mortar bank offering online service. And so that's my answer to
What percent done?
I think from my perspective, we need to agree on a definition first, then we can measure that. I see a lot of people, they are probably mixing between digital transformation and innovation. And that's, with that coming in mind, probably some of the measures or KPIs are not being properly targeted or even monitored and tracked. From my perspective and what's seen here in the local market and from my bank, we are definitely investing higher than that figure. And the focus is about transformation as well as that being supported by innovation ideas. Those things are because those leaders in local markets and internationally knows if you don't move, you will be lagging behind. So investing now to transform your bank, to transform the industry is a crucial, critical to not only to grow, but even to sustain your current situation. So probably that figure was in different countries, in different areas, but definitely is not in this country.
So from my perspective, the quick answer is, yes, I think it's 1%, and not only the banking, it's just generally the entire technology industry, right? So if I want to steal a quote from Amazon, they say we're still in the day one of the internet, right? So I think, yes, we are 1% banking, 1% technology. But trying to give a more nuanced answer here. So if we look at different pockets in the universe, so if you look at the US, Europe, Middle East, China, you can see there is different kind of levels of maturities in different verticals. So if you look at China, mobile payment, especially QR-based, is really off the charts. If you look at Africa, they're actually the market leader in mobile payments. If you look at the US, they're market leaders in technology. If you look at EU, they're market leaders in regulations, open banking and what have you. But talking more specifically about Saudi Arabia, I think, again, there is areas where we're really advanced. So I would say we rank in the top three spots in terms of smartphone penetration globally, right? So we're really advanced there. People love to use their devices. It's actually driven by customers. We don't have to educate them. they drive us to do it. So we're very advanced there. But if you look at a metric such as cash, we're behind, which is kind of counterintuitive given the kind of technology adoption. So I think in certain areas we are advanced, in certain areas we are not. That applies to Saudi and globally. But just to answer your kind of question directly, yes, I think 1%.
Good. Now, I'd like to build on the point that Ali made about the legacy banks face a huge challenge. And you have to be honest about that. You have legacy procurement process, you have legacy back office operations, you have mindsets, and that is a tough battle in order to achieve innovation. In Asia, we've tried pretty much everything. We've failed at almost everything. We've succeeded at some things. So for example, we've tried to spin off a digital bank. DBS started its own fresh digital bank in India, as an example. Standard Chartered is hoping to do that in Hong Kong. Other banks are trying to transform from within, so DBS is actually doing both. Every bank has an accelerator. Every bank has a startup program. Many banks have the venture capital arms. And we've seen some success, some just spending a lot of money and going to a lot of conferences. So we always tease about that in Asia Pacific. From your viewpoint here, and you all have a very critical vantage point to this, what's working? What's not working? In terms of accelerators, incubators, venture capital, how do you actually integrate this stuff into the business? Anybody dare to answer first? Now that I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I can reflect on the experience at NCB because this is exactly what we're doing. It's kind of trying to build on the heritage of kind of the digital native nature of NCB. So just before I kind of dive into it, there is one kind of key principle that we operate under in digital and generally at NCB is we really want to focus on our core. We're very relentless about getting the basics right. And then we work to innovate to delight our customers. So day in, day out, like we had the conversation before this panel, there are things that are very important, right? Getting the transaction gone through immediately, having things work every time, anywhere. So this is very important, and we don't take it for granted, and we really put a lot of energy in doing that. So really getting the basics right. And then over and above that, what we do, and this kind of falls under the umbrella of my day-to-day, is we look to the future. So how can we really push the envelope forward, introduce new products and services, and also bet in the long term? Because as I'm sure all of my fellow panelists here experience, if you're part of a big, strong organization, you want to make this giant run, right? So you want to really push it forward. You have a lot of strong stuff there, but you want to build on it for speed. So what we're doing is the following. We kind of think about it in two ways. One is the medium term and then the long term. When it comes to medium term, what we're trying to do is really making bets, partnerships, and products, either with fintechs or internal efforts, to introduce new products and services. And I can give a very specific example. So one of the initiatives that we're working on today is introducing a mobile payment solution for the SME market. It's an absolutely or almost untapped market. So we have around, depending on what number you want to believe, 500 to 300,000 merchants without digital acceptance devices. And we're working to really push there, right? That's one area to focus on the medium term and kind of tie that back into the day-to-day. The second area, which is focusing on the long term, and I want to be very kind of diligent about our experimentation, is we want to build an accelerator. So one of the thought processes is I want to build an accelerator to make bets on the medium to long term.
I think the challenge is real. So in summary to your question, the challenge is real because you've got two types of cultures. A first culture is valid and sustainable, the legacy culture, the beast, the monster, because it has a responsibility to not only protect itself, but to protect its shareholders' money, and it also has a responsibility to protect its customers. One of the things I heard in Singapore, coming from Singapore, was banks are the custodian of confidence and trust. And if we fail at that, then we've failed in our basic role. In terms of how do you innovate and how do you drive innovation and how do you digitize, the thing is you're trying to force something that was based on confidence and trust and you're trying to twist it. What we've done is we're more working on the proactive. So rather than waiting for the fintechs to come to us or trying to push things internally, we've built the applications and the solutions that give us the flexibility, such as the open API application infrastructure. We've worked on basically enhancing how we integrate with vendors, fintechs. And then now what we're doing is we're sourcing these guys in advance and just building a pipeline. So instead of them having to come and go through, so that's how we're mitigating the culture. We're trying to go in advance rather than waiting till after the fact and then trying to convince everybody that we need it. We were fortunate enough in GIB. We didn't have a legacy, as I said earlier. So what's happened is when we built the application architecture, we built it on the new technology, the API platform, all of these different solutions, which allows us today to be able to move slightly faster than most banks here in the region for that simple reason. Now everybody has an API, but the problem is the API then has to connect to about 10,000 apps in the legacy platform, and that takes another century to complete. So I think the challenge is real, but it's just how do you mitigate it? And some people have been able to be proactive, and some people continue to want to drive new things through the old environment. It just doesn't work.
It sometimes really doesn't work, and it's hard for people to admit that often.
If I may add to that, probably you're absolutely right about the challenges. So legacy system is one element. There are others related to risk, compliance requirements, and internal culture. In addition, we have probably a challenge to ourselves in SAP, which is and it's a huge challenge coming down the road, which is the integration between SAP and Awal as to merge together as one bank. However, I think if people start thinking differently, they should come up with different ideas and different way of thinking or different way of working. So as second Abdullah's point, doing the basics first, the fundamentals, thinking about long terms and starting small. In addition to that, the fintech should be part of your ecosystem to help you moving forward. So as much as you can to outsource and work with those fintech in certain elements, they will drive faster. There will be probably even the quality and customer experience will be better than the banks. And you only need to manage probably the risks related to that.
That's a good point. I want to share a lesson learned in Singapore, which we're feeling now, which is before it was always the fintechs pounding down the door of the bank. So the banks would complain to me, "Oh, Michelle, 10, 12 fintechs, they're all in here, they want to pitch their products, I don't have time," and blah, blah, blah. Now it's the opposite. Because the fintechs have so little time in their investment cycle to survive, they have to move fast, so they have to get extremely ruthless about how they spend their time. So the fintechs will say, "Is this a qualified deal? Do you have a budget approved? Do you have senior stakeholder support for this? Then I will come and pitch." Which is a very different story because the fintechs got kind of exhausted by, we call the slang term we use, I don't know if you guys have this here, we call it innovation theater, which is get the startups to come in and show their stuff and play with the toys, but we're not actually going to do anything with it. So a lesson learned is that if you do that for too long, you lose the goodwill. So you have to balance that with actual, the guidance that we've seen was make sure you're doing funded pilots so that there's skin in the game on both sides.
Right. As you said, Michelle, and what the gentleman also has well said, we frequently hold events where fintech come up and basically share their ideas. We also have an internal sandbox for everybody, no exception. Anybody who is innovative, startups, fintech, who have any cool idea, they could literally come in to our floor, and I'm saying literally our floor, and we share our expertise with them. We mentor them. We walk them through the integration and testing and all. So we do a little bit of both. We approach what we think more aligned with our strategy and more aligned with our short-term goals. And we also open the door for everybody who thinks they can do cool things with our bank. So a little bit of both.
That's a great mindset to highlight. Something that surprised me when I got into the Singapore ecosystem, I mentored some of the accelerators. So I was a mentor for UOB and Startup Bootcamp, and I was there hanging out as one does in the startup boot camp where all the fintechs are sitting, and there's 2 staff from the regulator just hanging out, playing ping pong. So the regulator took 2 people and just assigned them. They said, your job is just to hang out and be there through the entire cycle of those startups to help them understand how to navigate them. Because some of the startups really didn't know much about the regulatory environment. They didn't send senior people because this was sort of the basics, but just that, it was a mindset.
We don't want them to know about the regulatory environment. We just want them to bring their ideas and we'll take care of the regulatory environment. The idea is, the reason, where banks continuously get challenged is they want to do things themselves. It's because they're greedy. We are greedy people. We will not lie about it. We just want to do it ourselves. We want to launch it ourselves. We want to be the creators of, and the world has changed.
Please talk about GIB only.
So the world has changed. It's more about how do we collaborate and work with these guys. And if I have a fintech who comes to me and tells me we're already aligned to the regulatory environment, then we're not taking them. Because they're not pushing the boundaries hard enough. If they're going to come and tell me we will adopt your policies and procedures to launch the product, they're not hungry enough for us and we don't want them. We want the agencies that are willing to push the boundaries, that are going to help us transform the customer experience. Because I think customers are sick and tired of just being treated in the same way by all banks and they don't have an alternative that gives them fresh. I read an article the other day, I think it was by Harvard or somebody, I can't really remember. But in summary what it says is ways to integrate with fintechs, and the fastest way to kill fintechs is by actually bringing them in and learning to adopt into the regulatory environment or to your culture. So I just believe let them stay over there, let them play ping pong, let them do whatever they want, and let us worry about the regulatory environment.
That's great. How about you guys?
Yeah, to add to that, our central bank already is leading to innovate, and they already initiated the Saudi FinTech company. And we're now already, there's this rally of Saudi FinTech that Samba started it last week. And it's going for the whole week, and it's sponsored by many banks. Samba now is pushing for innovation, and they're pushing banks to test the waters. And the same, as I told you before, banks, they want the return on investment, so they don't want to test something and have a loss on it. But I think it's an area that you have to have a lab. It's an area that you have to have a test. It's an area you have to have an interaction with this company as a fintech. But as I said, the regulators, our regulator, but I think that this situation changed a lot now. It's being big appetite. Half of the country are millennials, so they're waiting for something new. I'm expecting in the next coming 2 years there'll be a very big transformation, and already started. But I think the most focus should be for any of the banks and colleagues to succeed is to be all around the customer. What the customer wants, what's the journey of the customer. That's how the success of Uber came, and Airbnb came. These companies came for the customer needs. Trivago, it'll give you the best prices. So we have to be careful because this challenge will be coming. So we should be up to that, inshallah.
So speaking of that, how much concern do you have about getting challenged by new challenger banks, upstart P2P lenders? Is that a concern, or is it just?
Well, yes and no. As banks, if we have now, there's this new position. Many banks, they're doing it, even other entities, chief of innovation. So if we're up to date and we're open for ideas, I think we can manage that challenge easily. But if you stay as you are and waiting, you'll have a big problem, and you'll be a follower. But followers now, you have type of followers. You have a ready follower who copy paste and do it immediately, so he's with the right. And you have some followers that very slow. I think at the end he'll be out of the game.
Are you worried? Are you guys worried about?
I'm absolutely not worried. As a customer experience specialist, and I've been doing this for a very long time, my career, I feel this is the most challenging of my career that I've experienced myself. So what I have seen from challenger banks is opening a new paradigm where experience, it is the core and the value service is to truly deliver an experience to the people. People take money to usually travel or buy something. And if we manage that experience from end to end, I think that would be the most challenging thing. And I believe that is the era where we are tapping in right now. And that's where FinTech and that's where challenger banks are tapping into. And I know banks are late adopters, but guess what? They opened that paradigm to us, and it's challenging time. Ali, what do you think?
What about you, Ali?
So, in summary, it's kind of a yes and no. The concern is, if you haven't heard of TransferWise, then I think now is the time to hear it. It's taken 26% of the UK market share in terms of remittances, global remittance. 26%. That money used to go to two players, the banks and SWIFT. And they're now taking 26% of that market share. And FYI, they're coming into the region as well, and they're very aggressive about what they're doing. So that's a revenue pool that banks used to rely on. The latest research in terms of the payments penetration that these fintechs will have and the remittance penetration that these guys will have, it's quite significant. They've already penetrated the US at 5% of the total country remittance. So I think that's my answer to the yes. And they're knocking on doors. See, Saudi, and I would say all of the region, was very cautious because they're trying to protect the consumer, and rightly so. But now that they're opening the doors, these very well-established fintechs, if you want to call them, are now knocking the door saying, I have a proven business model that works globally across the world, and I'd like to penetrate Saudi Arabia or Bahrain or UAE. And so what do I need to do? So they're coming. So that's the yes part. The no part is because thanks to the regulator, they're quite helpful in keeping the barrier of entry slightly higher. So that's giving us an opportunity to at least catch up before these players come in and start causing some damage. So we know who the key players are. We know where they're going to attack. So by the time, hopefully, that barrier is dropped, we would have at least built some sort of shield, I guess.
I can recommend from other markets, you need to assume that the competition will come.
For sure.
And being ready with customer experience and business models is your only defense. In Thailand, we had a similar debate maybe 2 years ago, and they said, but Michelle, our central bank is very strong, and they have a lot of barriers to entry there. That's their business model. And I said, I don't know, guys, they'll find a way. And sure enough, they did. I believe it was Ping An, who's the Chinese insurance company. They said, fine, you put up a barrier. So what they did, they bought 51% of the 7-Eleven transaction system, which carries most of the transactions of the country. So now they know exactly how much everybody's electric bills are and internet bills and et cetera. So there's always a way in. So that was a good lesson in terms of always questioning your beliefs about the market.
I will still continue to rely on our regulators and their strength in helping us maintain that barrier. And we're going to help them to make sure they drive innovation, no problem.
That's right. You guys will bring the innovation to the party, right?
Yeah, I would say that probably the local regulator, they played a major part to protect the financial sector here. However, with the changes, the rapid changes in the technology and innovation, we need to be worried about those new entrants, the fintech. They come up with ideas, sometimes you can't think about it. If you look at different sectors, like example, the telecom sector, what's up? When they started with a few people at Silicon Valley, they managed to close down a number of big telecoms around the world. People didn't thought that this 40 people, when they started at Silicon Valley, trying to test a social app with different stakeholders, they didn't thought at a point of time that everyone around the world, they will use it, and they have now more than 2 billion customers, which is the biggest public customer base, bigger than any bank in the world. So we are worried about it. Personally, I'm worried about it. But what we do about that, how can we tackle it? So I think its partnership is first. Secondly, is how to be innovative and more open to new ideas. The good thing about those new entrants and new fintechs, they help banks to think differently. Regulator, they start changing their rules. Banks, they start taking calculated risk, and they start thinking about partnership. In the past, banks were, as Ali said, were quite greedy. They would like to do themselves, everything by themselves, and they would like just only to have the big part of the pie. Now they start thinking differently. So why we can share that with some other parties to sustain and grow our together as partnership.
Also, fintechs are waking up to the same thing, right? Fintechs thought that they can drive the market, they can penetrate the banking sector, and they're going to take the whole world. And they've realized they can't. So now they're moving their model towards partnering with banks.
That's right. Case in point, Lending Club. I believe if you break it down into a case study, the key failure point was that their cost to acquire customer was so high, it was untenable. So the assumptions that they had made about their ability to acquire customers were not at all attached to reality. And the thing that the banks bring to the party is you have the customers. So I like your point about the partnerships, because now if you can partner with alternative data sources, payment streams, data streams, you have just enormous opportunities for innovations.
Partner or acquiring or
yeah, whatever it takes.
Or investing.
Exactly. And you have the advantage of taking a look at that strategically. From a venture capital standpoint, a fun example out of Asia Pacific, CM Commercial Bank's venture arm is very active, Digital Ventures, and they made a fun investment into a company that they do geolocation, but it's so precise that when you're in the shopping mall, it knows exactly which floor you're on and which store you're walking into. So the precision of that geolocation is not only good for e-commerce and offers, but also for risk management. So they took to your point, they took a long view to invest in that technology.
Absolutely, but just really piggyback on that point, and a comment made by my fellow panelist, Abdullah, which is, it's the paradigm shift, right? So there are certain technologies or fintechs that competes head-to-head. So if you look at the Revoluts, N26, Monzos, this is head-to-head competition, and this is not partnership. So you need to really compete with them head-to-head. When it comes to, for example, MPOS or maybe anything around targeting a segment that was previously unpenetrated, mostly SMEs or youngsters, partnerships become a very viable option. So I think certain banks in certain geographies and kind of market positioning can either partner or compete depending on where they stand in their strategic objectives. So I think in some areas, just to kind of summarize, it's head-to-head competition. And I think we need to move, innovate, because to your point, it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time, regulation will change. We can delay it, but we need to really push forward and innovate.
No, that's great. So I'd like to hear from you in closing out the panel. What I want to hear from you is what keeps you up at night and what gets you really excited about the coming year in terms of innovation. So give me both sides of the coin. Go ahead, Ghassan.
Okay, what keeps me up at night? I want to finish my projects first. If that finish, I'll have a very long sleep, inshallah. But if that happens, I think it will open a lot of doors for our innovation in Samba. We'll be back. It will open the door, especially when one of our colleagues, the APIs and middleware. It will be easy for us to put anything new to our legacy system, which we are very conservative about. We are in the process of changing our legacy system, but any core banking system takes very long.
Execution risk.
Execution risk. So we take that slowly, but the innovation part will take it in a fast track. But I'll still want to sleep after 6 months. Thank you.
So what keeps me up, or what brings me to work every day, is leveraging the technology that we have today, and we've been advanced massively in terms of technology. We got huge technology out there that it's not really utilized to provide better experiences and better services to our, especially in banking industry. So utilizing technology to provide better user experience and to provide better banking experiences in general. That's truly what brings me up to work every day.
Thank you.
I think in our case, it's I'd agree to the execution. I mean, that's always a fait accompli. But it's the culture that keeps me up at night. Because everything that we're building, you know, if we're unable to transform the culture, the probability of it falling back to, you know, when something goes wrong, going back to your old habits because that's where you felt safe, is where we stay up at night the most, you know, thinking about the most. We're trying to figure out a way as to where could the problems come from so we can avoid that happening again, and then everybody saying, see, we told you digital banking doesn't work, go back to the bricks and mortar and the paper and pen and quit everything else. That's the thing that scares us the most and keeps us trying to think of the next thing, where is it going to come from?
Well, from my perspective, I think having some challenges in life, it's more of enjoying your life. So routinic things is, if you feel you are doing the same thing every day, every single day, that doesn't make you enjoying every moment of your life. However, there are areas that we need always to think about, areas that we need to take a very careful look and study it very well. Firstly is the main enablers related to all of your work, the technology element, the people, the culture, and the most important part is the customer. How customer will perceive your new product and services. A lot of initiatives that failed because they expected something and the customer's expectation was completely different. So aligning your vision, aligning your initiatives with the customer expectations, this is the crucial element in the digital era.
And I couldn't agree more on the point of the challenges are really kind of exciting opportunities for us. So we see a lot of challenges, and the exciting part is what happens when you're on the other side of the fence. So kind of to that point, I think what's most exciting today is really kind of the massive push that SAMA and the respective governmental entities that are pushing, whether it's Sandbox, Saudi Payments, FinTech Saudi, all driven by Vision 2030, that's really mobilizing the financial sector industry in an unparalleled way. It's truly transformational. So it's really exciting to see that happening. And I guess what keeps me up at night is how can we capitalize on all of these opportunities.
Good. Well, I think my takeaways from this session are you have to make sure you manage your immediate execution risk so that you keep your mandate, but at the same time you need a long-term vision, right? You need to invest in what's going to bring you the rewards in the future, those future data streams. I appreciate the ecosystem mindset of bringing in the innovators and the startups, but also this partnership mindset. But at the same time, keeping your eye on those competitors, the Monzo Banks of the world, the N26 of the world.
There,
Right, that is always there, so you have to keep your eye on the competition. I think we have some differing views on approaches to regulation, where you're going to break out and try to think outside the box, where other people may be more in line with the regulatory mandates as they grow. So I think we'll see some differences of opinion there. And I think the final thing that I would keep in my mind as I walk away from this is that, think about this panel. Some of the leading innovators in the market here, we didn't talk about anything technical, did we? We talked about culture.
God, we didn't. Seriously, thank God we didn't.
But it's culture and leading the change of mindset, thinking about how to, and making the business case succeed. And yes, to your point, the technology is there. We just have to use it. Yeah. I think the technology is mature. AI actually is mature. Machine learning is mature. The data is there. So just a small job for you guys to go and put it all together and deliver it. Okay. Thank you very much, and many thanks to our panel for your time today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure.